I think just happy for me to make a start. And so I'll share the screen and we'll begin by chanting the dedication of offerings and the 3 Refuges and 5 Precepts. Well, I will when I can find it. There we are. To the Blessed One, the Lord who fully attained perfect enlightenment, to the teaching which he expounded so well, and to the Blessed One's disciples who have practiced well, to these the Buddha, the Dhamma and the Sangha, we render with offerings our rightful homage. It is well for us that the Blessed One, having attained liberation, still had compassion for later generations. May these simple offerings be accepted for our long-lasting benefit and for the happiness it gives us. The Lord, the perfectly enlightened and blessed One, I render homage to the Buddha, the Blessed One. The teachings so completely explained by him, I bow to the Dhamma. The Blessed One's disciples who have practiced well, I bow to the Sangha. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi, Dhammaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi, Sanghaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi, Tatiyampi Buddhaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi, Tatiyampi Dhammaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi, Tatiyampi Sanghaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi, Tatiyampi Buddhaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi, Tatiyampi Dhammaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi, Tatiyampi Sanghaṃ saraṇaṃ gacchāmi. Pāṇātipātā Veramani Sikkhapadang Samadhiyāmi. I undertake the precept to refrain from taking the life of any living creature. Aninādāna Veramani Sikkhapadang Samadhiyāmi. I undertake the precept to refrain from taking that which is not given. Kāmesu Miccācara Veramani Sikkhapadang Samadhiyāmi. I undertake the precept to refrain from sexual misconduct. Theravada Veramani Sikkhabadang Samadhiyami. I undertake the precept to refrain from lying. Sura Miriya Majjapamadatana Veramani Sikkhabadang Samadhiyami. I undertake the precept to refrain from consuming intoxicating drink and drugs which lead to carelessness. Imani pancha sikkhabadani silena sugatim yanti silena bhoga sampada silena nipatim yanti tasma silam visodhaye. These are the 5 precepts. Virtue is the source of happiness. Virtue is the source of true wealth. Virtue is the source of peacefulness. Therefore let virtue be purified. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. So it's an opportunity to practice meditation, to bring our awareness into our mind-body experience. Perhaps a theme that comes to mind could be that noticing is in 2 parts, two aspects. One is to notice the external, and the other is to notice the internal. And we can often think of mindfulness as being as noticing external, the external experience, the external, perhaps sensation we could see as external, for example. Even mental objects, we can think of them being external to us. And we don't notice the experience of them. We don't notice the experience of our how we experience the external world. And what's really beneficial is to bring our attention to the experience, how we experience the mind and body. And that means looking in, doesn't it? And when we're looking, when we think of the external, we imagine it's something outside us. So we're looking out. And the practice I would encourage is to look at a mirror, that mirror that reflects back to what our experience is. So we're really turning our attention inward rather than external. We're looking inward to the experience of the world rather than to imagine everything outside us, to focus our attention on the external. In reality, there is only the internal. the external is illusionary, it's an imagination. Whatever we see and experience is all inside. There is no, the outside is an illusion. It's simply experienced here. It's all experienced here. It's all an experience. The experience is all we can know. We can't know anything else. When we have an idea of something, it's not the thing itself, is it? When you think, let's say, whatever we perceive as being external is kind of based around an idea. Whereas the experience of something is direct, it's knowable, it's what we can know. We can only really know the experience of something internally. So, for example, if we have talk about suffering, we have this idea of suffering. We can create a mental idea of what suffering is as an idea. That's an external thing. If we imagine somebody suffering, then that's something imagined, isn't it? Even that feeling you can conceive of pain is external, something that we can imagine externally. But we're not really knowing or understanding from any of that. The only way to understand, or the only truth, is when we look inwards. So how does it feel? Whereas, to admit to suffering, to admit it and to let it in, to really experience it to look at the experience of suffering. That's the direct experience is the only truth there is. Everything else we're imagining it, we're making it up, in a sense. If it's external, it's a story we're making up about something. It's only when we experience it directly that we can say this is true. It's undeniably true because it's felt. It feels like this. So suffering is a good example. When if we want to know suffering, we look inwards. So how does it feel to feel like this? And that's quite challenging because you have to keep letting go of our concepts. Just keep on going back again and again to the direct experience. Keep turning back inwards and not believing in the concepts that we can create about something, but keep turning back into the experience itself. So you can experiment with this in our meditation today. So just as an example, how would it be possible to experience the body from the inside out, if you like? Not as an idea externally, as though you were looking at something, holding it up as an external object, but to go right into the body. Inside, and to experience it from inside, even though the surface of the skin, an itch or an irritation. Everyone must have some sensation on the skin that they can notice from the inside out. And to keep coming back to the experience of it. How is it? What is that? You can take a particular part of the body where there's tension, bring our attention into that. And let go of the word tension. And just rest in the experience of it. Direct experience doesn't need words. Perhaps you notice resistance. If you notice resistance, then go into that. What's the experience of resistance? Let go of the word resistance and just rest in how it feels, what it is. If you notice not wanting, you can notice how that feels. Or if it says, in the words, I can't bear it, come up. How does that feel? Perhaps you're beginning to relax a bit. Maybe the body's that tension is starting to ease in some way. And so we look at that word relax. How does that feel? Let go of the word and just experience the feeling of relaxing. What we can do when we notice the experience is bring everything in, not to exclude anything from our experience. So whatever we experience, we notice. That means including the experience of I don't want, I want, not just the aspect of wanting, but the aspect of self that underlies it. That self-identification with our experience is something we can notice. That's an experience too. Everything's reflected back with mindfulness. Nothing's excluded. We're just the observer. We're not trying to make sense of anything, but simply to see it clearly. Naming things can help us understand. We can recognize this. This is the experience of joy. And then we let go of the name and just rest in it to know what it's like. We don't believe the names we give things. We trust in the experience of things. So that's where truth lies. We watch things arise and cease. The thing itself doesn't matter, because the truth of it can be seen, arising, ceasing. It's the nature of everything. And we don't attach to things, saying that's good, or we don't push things away that we think are bad. We just notice them, and their nature is revealed. something which is very central to the Buddhist teaching is the teaching of causality. It was one of the insights the Buddha had in his enlightenment. You wonder, why is that so important? Why is it so fundamental? It's, cause and effect. Things happen because of causes. And when the things that we do have an effect, whatever we do, the choices we make have an effect. Things happen out of causes, and the choices we make have an effect. So why is that fundamental? I think what comes to mind is, first of all, I offer that as something for you to reflect upon, not as though I'm going to tell you the answer to this. Why is it so important? Also, invite you to put any questions into chat if anything comes up. But why is it that that's so central to the Buddha's teaching? When things that come to my mind when I look at this, first of all, incredible sense of gratitude to be here now. So whatever causes and conditions gave rise to that, there's that I feel a great sense of gratitude for that. And when what is that? Because, well, partly because of that. Well, I think it comes down to really how lucky I am, because there are so many choices I've made in life. In every moment, we make choices. Yet here I am. So wow, that's incredibly lucky. I can't believe how lucky I feel. How much gratitude I feel to that, to be that, to have to have come across the good people I've met in my life, and to come across Buddhism, for example, as well. Perhaps that's the most important thing. But then to have survived the stupid things I've done and yet still be here, I just think it's a miracle to get through adolescence. So many people don't, and I feel so sorry for them, because of some small thing they didn't have that luck that I did to get through and come through, and then to meet the people I've met and to discover the opportunity, to take the opportunities I've had. So let's say coming into contact with Buddhism, I just was, in London looking for something to do, a way of meeting people, and I came across an advert that said, "Come and find out about Buddhism." running a course, and I decided to give it a try, and not wanting to become a Buddhist or anything like that, or thinking. I just thought it'd be interesting to find out about. So I found out a little, and the more I found out, the more interesting and the more committed gradually I became. But I was so lucky to meet the right people at the right time. It was amazing that choosing to come to live in Hemel Hempstead, it happened just a few, maybe 3 or 4 years before Lumpur Sumedho decided to establish Amaravati, just 4 miles away from where I lived. And I had the idea of coming to leave London because I didn't want to bring up a family in Chiswick, where we lived. And I wanted to get out of London, and I thought of many, looked at what opportunities there were. And I was offered a job in Yorkshire, but when I looked around, I couldn't find any Buddhist places. Then, at that time, it was about 45 years ago. And so even though I didn't have a job I turned that job down, and I moved to Hemel Hempstead, even though I didn't have any work here, because it was near London, near enough London, and there was some Buddhism to be found in London. So it was a deliberate decision to keep close to Buddhism even then. And I had no idea that Amaravati was going to be established nearby. But yeah, it was interesting how that choice, it was a choice I made, was, the choices that you make, every one of them influences the rest of your life, doesn't it? And we have no idea, really, what the results will be. We don't really know. We can guess, perhaps we can do things for a reason, but we don't really know what the outcome will be. We can't be sure. And we could have chosen something different, and the outcome would have been different. Who knows? We don't know. But all we can say is that we're here now. And if it's the value, the benefit, whatever benefit we've derived from life, we're the inheritors of it here, in this moment. But then, for many people, it could have been, and for me, it could have been so different. So, understanding cause and effect, then, I think one thing that comes out of that is it brings us together, in a sense, in a kind of common humanity. Because we know whatever circumstances people are in, whoever we come across, it could have been us. Those small choices we made, those small decisions, the directions that we took, because we could have so easily taken this direction that perhaps led that person to be in those circumstances. Or by not even a deliberate choice. Look at the things that we've done that just from other conditions could have impacted on them on differently. The mountains I climbed, that rock I stood on that didn't fall away, but could have done. And what difference would that have made? And it wasn't a deliberate, let's say, karmic decision to stand on that rock, put my weight on that rock. It was there to stand on. It looked solid, but it might not have been. And the outcome could have been so different. Perhaps the next person to stand on that rock, it gives way. Who knows? There's so much chance really in life. Yet these are all conditions that we inherit. We're the inheritors of all these conditions that brought us to where we are now. And I can't help but feel grateful for the conditions I've inherited. But I do think that the teaching of cause and effect helps us understand or empathize with other people in the world, because we can see how it could so easily have been us that had things run a different course. Understanding of cause and effect doesn't explain why. It simply says because of conditions. We don't really understand why. We don't really know all the conditions that come into play. We can't fathom it out. We don't know. Even in our own lives, we can't say how it is that we're here right now. All of those conditions that have come into play, we can't know them all. We can't expect to understand, or try to understand, or to reason it out, or to make sense of it even. We can be in the present moment. We're the inherited of the past. And in the present moment, we have some influence. We can make some choices. And if we can choose well, those choices, will have good results. Well, what is choosing well? It means choosing good above bad, doesn't it? Choosing to follow the precepts, for example. They protect us. Well, they don't actually stop a madman coming and killing us. It doesn't govern everything. What we can do is just a little. But if we train the mind to not hate, let's say we bring through non-harming, we cultivate that not harming, head in the direction of non-hatred. Then if some madman comes and kills us or tries to kill us, then hopefully hatred doesn't arise. There's aversion. We understand the whatever arises. We have better tools in our toolkit, if you like, to accept that whatever it is. And so the training that we can bring into the present moment to cultivate the heart so that we have a better toolkit, if you like, better conditions to bring to bear when in the future this is what we can do. This is described as a wonderful simile it's in the sayings of King Melinda, or the there's a book about it. It's one of King Melinda and Nagasena have a debate. I don't know if you've come across it. And one of these, it's commentarial, Buddhist commentarial literature. And one of these similes is Nagasena says, well, it's a great king. It's like this. If you wanted a water, would you dig a well? And the king says, yeah, well, of course I would dig a well, but actually, but no, it'd be too late to dig a well. You were already thirsty. You'd die of thirst before the well was dug. So it's pointless to dig a well when you're thirsty. What's the point of digging a well? And so the meaning of the simile is to do what's beneficial. If you want water, you need to have dug the well before. So cause and effect, we can look at our inheritance and say, oh, look, I've got no water. That's what our experience is in the present. But that's because we didn't dig the well in the past. Yet, it doesn't stop us digging a well in the now. Although, say, well, if you want water, it's too late to dig the well. But when the opportunity arises, when the choices are available, dig that well, because it's there, then the water will be there in the future. It's a bit like in my garden, I've got apple trees, and when I planted them, it would be years before I was going to get apples, but I didn't need apples that much. In the meantime, I could buy apples. Eventually, I've got more apples than I know what to do with, so those trees bear fruit, and well, one day, you never know. Well, at the moment, I just enjoy the apples. That's how it is. But there was a time when I didn't have apples, so that's the same simile, isn't it? So the interesting thing about cause and effect is, in a way, it's too late. We've missed the opportunity of doing all those good things. And on the other hand, in the present, the opportunity is now. So we need to, it brings us into the present moment. I think this teaching around cause and effect thrusts us right into the present moment. There's nothing we can do about the past. All we can do is act now in the present. And it's a continually recurring present moment. And all we can do is to do what we think is the right now. There's no point in worrying about the past. We can't change that. And there's no point in being anxious about the future. All we can do is be present and act in the present. That's the only thing of any value, is the present moment. It's so interesting to reflect on cause and effect, because it seems to be kind of very fundamental in terms of the way we live our lives, if we can understand cause and effect. I also think, as I said, it's a way of forgiveness, a path towards forgiveness. We look at, and we might look at people and think they're terrible, they do this and that, they do terrible things, maybe they've done terrible things to us. But whatever people do, they've acted out of that inheritance that they've been dealt, if you like, those cards that they've got in their hand that's caused them to do those things. It doesn't excuse and forgive. It's not an excuse, but it's an understanding of how people do bad things. And it means that we don't judge them in the same way, because it could have been us. It's one of the interesting stories in Buddha, of the Buddha's time. He had a cousin called Devadatta, and he wanted to become a Buddha. And he wanted to become the Buddha so hard, he tried to kill the Buddha so that he could take over. And so it's the worst thing you can do is to try and kill a Buddha. There's nothing worse in terms of karma. It's a terribly bad thing to try to do. And so, but what the Buddha said was that Devadatta, although he couldn't escape the consequences of his actions, that eventually he would become a Buddha himself. He would realize that, because that intention to kill him, to kill the Buddha, that intention, that what was underlying it was that wish to become a Buddha himself. And that was so strong that eventually that would win through, and that he would become a Buddha in the future. So that's unbelievable, that story, I think. That, the conditions, the causes that caused Devadatta to do something that was so incredibly bad, underlying it was an incredibly good intention. It's just that it went wrong. Something went wrong along the way, and it turned out like that. It did something incredibly bad. And when we look at people in the world, we see them doing things, we can look at them and say, oh, what you're doing is so incredibly bad. What a bad person you are. But the underlying, I don't think we can, if we could go right back, if we could see the original intention. They never set out to be this person. Originally, the Buddha's, also the Buddha's teaching of the natural radiance of the mind. The mind is naturally pure. That underlying everything is that natural purity, and that ultimately we all want to come home to that, to realize that peace. That's what a Buddha taught, that's our nature. And so, however bad people are, apparently, they simply they're working against nature, and so eventually they, perhaps like Devadatta, will become Buddhas in the end. Who knows? I'm not sure. I don't know much about Mahayana, but I've got a feeling that Mahayana talks about this a bit more. But I'm just, from a Theravada perspective, it still seems to me that there's a lot to be optimistic about. Has anyone got any questions? Do you like to unmute and ask a question? Hi, Simon.
Hi, Martin.
Hi.
Thank you very much for the listener you just gave. It was very insightful. I have a quick question about something I came across recently. That it just you mentioned about how Devadatta wanted to.
Devadatta.
Yeah. Sorry, Devadatta. He wanted to obviously try and kill his cousin, the Buddha. And I came across the story of Angulimala and how he wanted to also try and kill the Buddha, but under like a separate circumstance of not knowing who the Buddha was.
True.
And I had read that if you, and I don't want to go too depressing in this conversation, but that obviously if you kill, I think it's the Buddha, or you try and kill the Buddha, or you kill one of your parents, you kind of go straight to hell. Like it's almost like unavoidable. And I was wondering, sort of like, first of all, is the difference between someone like Angulimala who didn't eventually go to hell and Devadatta is the fact that Angulimala didn't have the intention of killing a Buddha, just killing a person who happened to be the Buddha. And just wondering, sort of like, when it comes to these sort of repercussions of cause and effect of something, what is it that, obviously it's a very bad thing to try and do, but is there a sense of, I'm just wondering, is there like a particular thing given in the Tripitaka about what is it that's so terrible? Obviously it's terrible, but what's so terrible about if you were to kill your parents or a Buddha, that is different from just killing a regular person, in terms of like that? Obviously that can still send you to hell, but there's like seems to be a separation. I know it's a bit of a, probably something that's probably not that important, but I was just wondering in terms of...
No, I actually don't know the answer to that one, to be honest. I don't really know. And in practical terms, killing anybody is not a good thing to do. It's a bad thing to do. I guess the closer, in terms of your parents, maybe, I don't know, that's a very close relationship. I don't know. I really don't know. I'll tell you what, though, I do know about Angulimala. The reason why the Angulimala didn't go to hell was because he was an arahant. So when you realize arahatship, then you've gone beyond causality, in a sense. You've gone beyond the karma. You no longer inherit karma. You brought karma to an end. So the Buddha talked about his enlightenment, not just in terms of realizing dukkha and the end of dukkha. He talked about understanding karma and the end of karma, realizing the end of karma. So when talking about cause and effect as being like that important, when you really understand it, then you no longer create, or you no longer inherit that karmic result of past action. But you can't be born into, you're not born again, if you like. So you can't go to hell. And that's how it was that Angulimala didn't go to a hell realm, but Devadatta did.
I was just simply going to ask, is it the sense that, is it with Kama that if there was something underlying everything that knew the intention of everyone's action, like, because I don't want to take up too much time, I was just going to ask, in terms of the whole idea of going to different realms, is it the sense that I once heard an Ajahn say, you kind of send yourself to these places, like almost like there is a conscience that feels pretty bad about doing something, and in a way you kind of, I don't know if that's a bit, whether that's too theoretical, or whether what I'm saying is someone like David, maybe he had the part of him that wished to be an arahant, sort of realized what a terrible thing to try and do, and maybe almost consigned himself to a particular outcome. I don't know if that's the right word.
I find it more interesting to think in terms of the present moment. So, in the present moment, what's in your mind? And because that's really where you're born, isn't it? You're born into that. So we're continually being born into hell realms or heaven realms, or even by letting go, we are stepping in that direction of realizing the truth and letting go, and in this heading towards enlightenment. And that's freeing ourselves from this mess that we have inherited. And because of the mess that we've inherited has these causal consequences we can't avoid. But in the present moment, you could say that you inherit a memory. That memory of might be it's quite, how when you inherit a memory, it most likely to be something that you think often about. The thing that you think most often about is the thing that's most likely to arise. So if, let's say, we have a particularly if we are of a personality, if we have a very lustful frame of mind, and we are continually stoking that lust, then it's quite likely a lustful thought will arise. That's the default position. So it's going to arise. If it was hate, maybe an angry thought. If we, even like I said before, if we let anxiety become, we start searching for something to be anxious about, that fills the mind. So we get born into these conditions, the results of that. And so we can gain so much from training the mind through meditation practice. When an unwholesome thought arises, we to recognize it, and to when we understand it, what it means by understanding it means we understand the results of holding on and developing that thought, and perhaps the action that follows. We don't want to go there. So we understand it. So why would we? So we wouldn't do that. We would recognize that thought and lay it aside. We wouldn't follow that. And that has a causal consequence. We wouldn't be consumed by that. It could be that then another thought that's wholesome arises, and we think that's something to nurture and cultivate. That's something beautiful. And why wouldn't I? So let's go there. So that the mind gradually, through that habit, the obsessive way of the mind is, it simply follows these habits. And if you give it wholesome habits, it starts to follow that. And that means that you begin to inherit a much happier world. You start to inhabit that world. So I find that more useful. I don't worry too much about dying or what death happens, what it's like, because I think what happens when we die is that it's just another moment in time, and we'll inherit whatever it is. and that's why that's the simile of when we dig a well. You dig the well so that there's water when you need it, and when you need it, it's there. And when we die, we don't know what will be nice to have a well to drink from. It's too late to dig the well then, and that's what the simile's about. Do it now.
All right. Thank you very much.
Has anyone else got any questions? Barbara.
It's not so much a question, but then a little story about my grandson. And as it was half term, he stayed with us for a few days, and we had a lot to do, obviously. Children never stop thinking and doing something, wanting to do something. And we were here in this room, and he was quiet for a moment. And then he said, "Do you do mindfulness?" He's 6 years old. And I said, as a matter of fact, "Yes, I do. And do you do mindfulness?" So he said, "Yes, I do." And I said, "Tell me about it." So he said, "We do it at school." Okay. So I said, "Can you teach me?" And he said, "Yes. You lie down and you put your hands like this on your tummy, and then you breathe and you count to 4. And then you breathe out. And then you can also count to 6. And so he said, "Yes, you do it now," because he was lying down here and I was lying down there. And so we both did it. And then also he said, "You can also listen to what's going on around you." And I said, okay, what can you hear? I hear a lot of sounds, he says. Sometimes I hear birds, and sometimes I don't hear anything. And so it went on. And I said, thank you very much, Daniel. And somebody had come in, and that was our moment of mindfulness. And I was so pleased to know that we share that. And there you are.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We never know, what children will remember and what will be useful to them later in life. It's that the Amaravati there have a family camp, and I used to take my daughter to that, and she was always working out ways to be naughty, and she would, instead of sitting on the cushion, she'd put the cushion on her head and things like that. And because I was there, and she wanted to try and find ways to annoy him, to get a reaction. She was wanting to get a reaction from me, and she was always leading all the others astray. You was thinking, oh, who came up with that idea? It was always my daughter. She was doing always naughty things, anything she could think of. But that, it didn't. That still. The person she is now, I mean, some of that must have influenced her. We don't know. We can't say. It's a mystery, but it doesn't matter. That what happens for people when they're young, it's always available. It's always there. That sort of memory. The Buddha, before his enlightenment, remembered meditating as a child, didn't he? Remember that? And that gave him the way into enlightenment, because he realized that it was okay to that he realized that it was okay to be joyful and happy. It didn't have to be all about suffering. Actually, he discovered the middle way. He realized it was natural. There was nothing wrong with joy and happiness. Yeah. Because he enjoyed it. His experience as a child meditating was joyful. It was just a natural joy. He realized, oh, it's not that, it doesn't have to be suffering. This pursuit of the ascetic ideal, and that only truth could come out of suffering, but it wasn't. It was the middle way. Was what he named his teaching. That came from that reflection. Anyway, I think we've reached the end of our session today. So thank you very much for joining me and coming along. And it's lovely to see you all.
Thank you very much, Martin.
Thank you.
Yeah. Hope to see you again. Maybe not next week,
Thank you
but the
very
week
much.
after. Okay.